Welcome to the week that changes everything. I'm recording this on July 9th, one day before a powerful full moon in Capricorn that marks the most significant turning point of 2025. This is primarily because Uranus has recently entered Gemini a couple days ago on July 7th. And we are also less than a week away from Neptune having stationed retrograde on July 4th for the first time in Aries, and in less than a week on July 12th or July 13th, depending upon your time zone, Saturn will station retrograde for the first time in Aries. And this full moon on July 10th is in Capricorn, the sign of Saturn, with Saturn stationing, intensifying Saturn's presence, and also placing Saturn about 13 minutes away from Neptune in Aries. And so this week we are getting the closest contact between Saturn and Neptune that we have had yet. And although they are not forming an exact conjunction and will not do that until February of next year, this week especially, it is going to feel like we have entered this zone of Saturn and Neptune coming together in a conjunction, and it's going to give us the greatest insight we've had so far about what are some of the big collective as well as personal themes, narratives, plot twists, turning points in your story that you are experiencing in correlation with Saturn and Neptune coming together. But first and foremost, the most important thing of all this week is that entrance of Uranus into Gemini, because this is the final piece of the great puzzle of mystery of what will be unfolding in the years ahead as we enter this new collective era of Uranus having changed signs from Taurus into Gemini, combined with what has already happened, which has been Pluto having moved from Capricorn into Aquarius, Jupiter having moved into Cancer recently, Saturn having moved from Pisces into Aries, and Neptune having moved from Pisces into Aries. All of this was set up for Uranus to be the final piece to move into Gemini and catalyze even greater change, and a period of time that will, in many ways, feel unprecedented with the type of innovation, invention. We can all feel how we are on this threshold of incredible change. At the same time, there is so much collective uncertainty. And so when Uranus entered Gemini on July 7th, it immediately began applying to a trine with Pluto in Aquarius and another air sign. So we have this flowing airy trine now taking shape and forming between Uranus and Pluto in Aquarius that will become exact eventually in these signs. And at the same time, Uranus is applying to a sextile with Saturn and Neptune. This configuration promises and portends so much change over the years ahead. And this week, we are just getting the initial introduction to them. There will be enormous world events unfolding. And in our personal lives, it does present the opportunity to radically change your life. And at its best, this configuration will support focusing in on that authentic vocational calling or purpose or passion or creative direction or path of service or whatever it is you want to build or express or share in your community. We are going to be in a time of incredible change, and it will bring up a lot of uncertainty. But as we traverse this period ahead, pay attention to what is coming alive within you and look around for the supports and resources that are available, and figure out also how you can be somebody contributing resources and inspiration and support for those around you to do the same. Now, the fascinating thing about Uranus entering Gemini and setting off this configuration is that we will get an initial experience of this new Uranus and Gemini storyline for the rest of July, August, September, October, and then in the first week of November, on November 7th, Uranus will return to Taurus, where Uranus has been since 2018, and we will get a final experience and lesson related to Uranus and Taurus until next year on April 25th, Uranus will return to Gemini, where Uranus will stay until August 3rd of 2032, at which point we will have a period of Uranus moving into Cancer and then back into Gemini until Uranus is finally done with the transit of Gemini on May 22nd of 2033. This means there's almost an 8-year period of Uranus and Gemini coming in. And so this is a huge new chapter of your life opening up right now. And what's further interesting is that it's not just Uranus and Gemini coming back into Taurus. As I've talked about previously, in the beginning of September, Saturn will move from Aries back into Pisces, and then later Neptune will also move from Aries back into Pisces. And so something in these next couple months especially is being set off by this new configuration. Then we will return back to a period of taking it in, finishing up lessons related to Pisces and Taurus. And then next year in 2026, we are full on entering this new period of accelerating change, building off of whatever happens in these next few months. Hey, I'm Greg Crawford. I'm a professional astrologer. And if you'd like to talk about how all this great astrological change relates to you and your life, my books are open for consultations right now. I will put a link below in the description so you can book a consultation with me. I'm also offering a coupon code for 20% off of all of my consultations as long as you book before July 24th. Use the coupon code Jupiter in my scheduler below. It will expire on July 24th, so just use it before then. I sometimes periodically offer discounts on consultations for people that support me on Patreon, but I haven't done this for the general public in a very long time. There's so much going on right now. I just wanted to make my services more available, so I look forward to working with you. Before I go further into the forecast, I also want to let you know about an astrology course I have starting soon on July 19th. This course is all about secondary progressions, which is my favorite timing technique. I'll put a link below so you can read more about this technique as well as the course. This is a very powerful technique for learning more about your own life and your life story. And if you're an astrologer that works with other people, it is one of the most accurate, practical techniques that you can really use. It really always works, and it can be very flexibly integrated with any other timing technique that you already use. So please check out my Story Cycles course in the link below. The significance of Uranus changing signs cannot really be overstated. It is such a massive, big deal because Uranus can shake up an area of your life like no other transit quite can do. This is because it brings in the unexpected. And when Uranus strikes like lightning, things can just rapidly accelerate and come together with a great force. This can be, like I'm saying, feel very unexpected, like something coming out of nowhere. But oftentimes it can be something that comes in supporting you on the path you are already on. And it can be something that at times gives you that leap of thought or leap of advancement to another level, a big breakthrough that comes in like a great revelation of lightning, connecting the heavens with the earth, bringing these great revelations and insights down to you. And I always advise people that the best way to work with Uranus is to focus in on what is that authentic passion, purpose, calling that you can devote yourself to, that work or service or creativity or artistry that makes you fully alive, excited to be here. That really is the best way to work with Uranus. And so right now, as I'm recording this again, it's July 9th. We've only had Uranus in Gemini for a couple of days. Take a deep breath, look around, look at yourself, look at the world around you. Might be a good time just to journal and write out some initial ideas and impressions. Look at your life. Look at what you would like to change. What would you like to renovate? What would you like to innovate? What would you like to invent or discover more of? And especially noticing what's going on within you. How are you starting to feel like there's something new for you to do? There's some way you perhaps felt constrained or limited, or you've been doing something that's not authentic, that's not fully feeding you and feeding your soul and feeding your passions. However, you're already starting to sense this is changing, follow that lead. And we'll talk more about here some of the specifics of what Uranus in Gemini can mean for you. And so when we're breaking down the sign of Gemini and the significance of Uranus moving from Taurus, this earthy, fixed sign of Venus, into Gemini, one of the starting places is to consider what does it mean that Uranus is no longer in the earthy domicile of Venus and is now in the airy home of Mercury. There are many reasons why Uranus and Gemini is such an innovative and inventive transit throughout history. One of the reasons being that the north node of Uranus is in Gemini. But I feel like the most powerful correlation is the fact that this is a sign of Mercury and the airy home of Mercury. The airy home of Mercury really supports that intelligence and communication of Mercury, the propensity and power Mercury has for discoveries and inventions and developing new lines of communication and thought and translating and interpreting ideas, mixing different ideas together, measuring things, balancing things. We see throughout history the transit of Uranus and Gemini go with great leaps of thought, great technological inventions that often have some type of focus in on communication and learning. And we know with whatever advancements are going to be coming in with AI, we can feel how we're on the precipice right now of a lot more coming in. We know that with Uranus being in Gemini, one of the major areas of life that's going to change so fundamentally is going to be education and the education system and systems of learning, and however AI ends up coming into this. There could be some really powerful advancements that come in with this, although at the same time, it'll probably feel very unsettling with how different things will be. We also see throughout history great changes come in with communication. So, for example, things like the telegraph being invented during a previous Uranus and Gemini transit, and thoughts and messages suddenly being able to be sent across continents to one another instead of having to mail something or ship something, at great length and taking great time to travel in between places. The last time a lot of the inventions that went with digital computing coming in, even an early model of the mobile phone coming in, the previous time Uranus was in Gemini. But if you go even further back, things like Gutenberg developing the early models and designs of the printing press goes with this transit. And although the printing press didn't really come into commercial use until after the Uranus and Gemini transit, it was being developed during that time period. And other periods of Uranus and Gemini went with an increase of the printing revolution, and newspapers coming in a lot more powerfully. And previous Uranus and Gemini transits also went with the university system and big scholastic movements coming in, bringing all these different ideas together. And so these are all things that we know Uranus and Gemini are going to massively increase. And so the mental thought, the mental ideas that you're developing right now are all going to be really important to pay attention to. Mercury is also that planet that bridges heaven and earth, the spiritual, the material with the immaterial, the conscious with the unconscious. It has this dialectic, this dialogue of moving in between things, measuring different things. It's a planet that goes with mathematics and exchanges of all sorts, certainly mercantile activities. And so we've already been seeing with Uranus in Taurus transit how much the monetary system has been changing and exchanges and trades. And so this area of mercantile activity will also be an area where things are just going to be obviously radically changing, especially with Uranus and Gemini having this airy flowing trine with Pluto in Aquarius, while Saturn and Neptune are really reshaping our sense of reality. We can really feel how all these areas of our life are going to start drastically changing. And as I mentioned, it's not just that Gemini is the sign of Mercury, it is the airy home of Mercury. And so, this quality of the air element, which Uranus is especially at home in, is another powerful aspect of Uranus entering Gemini. So, Uranus has been in Taurus. It's an earth sign, and it's a fixed earth sign that is slow to move at times. It can be resistant to change, but once you get Taurus moving, it can be like the stampede of bulls, and a lot of change can come in. And we've been experiencing that, but it's taken Uranus working with Taurus, slower building of change, and Taurus is a little bit more resistant to that quality Uranus has of coming in like a whirlwind and speeding up change with this frenetic pace. Gemini, being an air sign, being a Mercury air sign, is all about this. And so Uranus has incredible affinity with Gemini. And you combine that with Pluto already being in Aquarius and the fact that we are in this age of air, of Jupiter and Saturn forming all of their conjunctions in air signs all the way until 2159 and beyond. 2159 will be the first one that's not in an air sign, but there'll be more after that. So we are in this incredible age of air, of new technological innovations coming in, of all these old earth structures and hierarchical power structures of the last couple of centuries starting to fall apart and dissolve, especially with Saturn and Neptune coming in right now. Things dispersing, things moving, rapid accelerations of thought and change. And these are all areas where Uranus is so powerful, especially the way Uranus can strike like lightning, and we can get these big revelations of thought and influences coming in. And so collectively, the ideas we are sharing, the ideas we are developing will likely be circulating even more powerfully. This does mean that you can be more under the influence of collective ideas and group ideas. And so it is going to be important to pay attention to the information you are taking in. What news sources are you watching? What social media sources are you reading or listening to? Who is influencing your thoughts? And the more you can do meditative practices or ways of sort of going within to connect in with your own ideas and your own thought process as you're mediating this, that's going to be really helpful so you're not overly influenced by ideas and thoughts that aren't really aligned with who you are and what you want to do with your life. But it does mean this is an incredible time of great leaps in thought, which can be very inspirational to the collective. This can be an era of new ideas coming in, new collective movements coming in, whether that's artistic movements, spiritual movements, philosophical movements. There can be a lot more fervor and a lot more collective sharing and mutual inspiration going on in these years ahead. Gemini is also a mutable sign. The mutable signs transition us from one season to the next. In the northern hemisphere, Gemini comes at the end of spring, transitions us into summer. And so, on one hand, there is this transitional quality of the mutable signs, which goes with Uranus and Gemini being that final piece that's really transitioning us into this new era opening up. The mutable signs are all signs that also have images of two-ness or double-bodiedness. And of course, with Gemini, we have the image of the twins, which in Greek mythology are seen as Castor and Pollux. One thing about Gemini being a double-bodied mutable sign is that this means there will be many things going on at once. It's going to be an incredibly busy time of all sorts of new ideas and potential paths coming up to follow. Gemini is the great multitasker that can actually handle doing all these different things at once. However, there's going to be something very important about not getting too dispersed and too distracted by too many options. One thing about Gemini and the twins, when we look at a lot of these stories, there's often one twin that goes down to the underworld. In the Castor and Pollux story, one twin goes down to the underworld. Castor, the mortal twin, and the immortal twin Pollux gives up his immortality so that they can start alternating with one twin in the underworld, one twin in the above world. There is this fateful, important choice, this choice that has to be made. And it is going to feel like we are in this underworld type of journey of entering a new era in the years ahead. And if you are following mythology and the ancient mysteries in the underworld, there normally is a choice that has to be made. We are presented with options. There's a fork in the road. There are different potential paths that open up, and we have to make a fateful choice. And although Gemini has this reputation of being too scattered and trying to do all these things at once, Geminis have the lesson of needing to make the choice, needing to take a stand, needing to figure out what they are going to fully devote themselves to. And this aspect of Uranus and Gemini is going to be very important. And it is going to be especially important this week with this full moon in Capricorn, because at the same time the full moon in Capricorn is being illuminated, Saturn is going to be stationing in Aries for the first time. And this means we do need to make a choice. We need to look at what's going on in the world, what's going on with our life, and figure out what are we going to devote ourselves, what is most important to us, and make a commitment and devotion to making that happen. And so the full moon in Capricorn on July 10th is at about 19 degrees of Capricorn. We can see on this chart that the full moon is flowing, separating away from a trine with Mars in Virgo. And it's not making any immediate applying aspects. For the rest of the time, the moon is in Capricorn. There are not any exact aspects. And then the next day, when the moon enters Aquarius, it will immediately form a trine with Uranus, move into a sextile with Saturn and Neptune, and then apply to a conjunction with Pluto in Aquarius. And that aspect of the trine to Uranus just after the moon enters Aquarius is just within the 12-degree orb of the moon. And so there is a way that this full moon has an interesting delayed connection into this very powerful new configuration that's forming between Uranus, Pluto, Saturn, and Neptune. But at the same time, it's a Capricorn full moon that's very much just hanging out in the middle of Capricorn without making any immediate aspects to any other planets. So one of the many fascinating things about this Capricorn full moon is how we would normally think about a Capricorn full moon being about getting organized, being pragmatic and practical, making a plan, ordering things, getting grounded, really facing reality and our circumstances, but figuring out a plan to build things, to get to the next level with whatever we are developing, and using that earthy quality of Capricorn to discriminate and make choices and bring discernment in to make some tough decisions about what's working, what's not working, adjusting plans, and bringing some clarity into the analysis. Being cut and dry in some ways, but Capricorn is also a visionary, imaginative sign at the same time that can see that bigger picture, make those long term goals, and develop a plan to get there. The thing that's really unusual and different about this full moon in Capricorn is that Saturn is stationing in Aries for the first time, and Neptune is also right there in Aries, really close to Saturn. And Neptune has also stationed retrograde in the week before the full moon. And so we have a combination of both Saturn and Neptune being intensified and being very close together. As I mentioned before, Neptune stationed retrograde on July 4th, less than a week before the full moon. And then a few days after the full moon on July 13th, if you're in the Eastern time zone, or later, this will be later in the day on July 12th. If you're in the Pacific time zone or Mountain or Central, we have Saturn stationing retrograde for the first time in Aries. That alone is going to be a huge deal because Saturn takes on an intensified presence and brings in major messages when it stations. And it's particularly powerful when Saturn stations for the first time in a sign. So we should be getting some clear-cut news about the meaning of Saturn in Aries for us. But as I mentioned, Neptune is also stationed, and Saturn, when it stations, is only 13 minutes away from Neptune. So this is as close as Saturn and Neptune are going to get to one another before they eventually form a conjunction next February. And so there is going to be this powerful intensity of Saturn and Neptune coming alive all around us in this way that it has not up until now at quite the same amplified degree. And it's all the more important because Saturn is the Lord of this full moon. I've talked at length about Saturn and Neptune coming together in conjunctions in previous videos, but just to remind you, this is a time of collective reality warping and changing in very fundamental ways. It can be a time of great despair and delusion and illusion in the collective. It can be a time when our dreams are tested, when we might feel like we're being overwhelmed by darkness, and especially the feeling of uncertainty can be very pronounced as many systemic structures and old reliable forms of security are dissolving, and people around us are also shifting and changing. It can be a time of just incredible change in the world, but it also becomes an incredible change in our personal lives. And although there can be great uncertainty, it also does create the opportunity for making change. And so something is going to be illuminated, and there's going to be a powerful message coming through this week about our relationship with Saturn and Neptune right now. If this is difficult, if you're not getting the kind of news and message that you're hoping to receive, it just means there needs to be a change in plan. It doesn't mean that all is lost right now. And in fact, because we have this new configuration of Uranus and Gemini coming in to form this flowing trine with Pluto, and they're in the harmonious sextile with Saturn and Neptune, there likely are solutions available. There likely are resources to get into contact with, or people to reach out to in your community, or great brainstorming ideas coming through that give you some sort of revelatory insight or creative solution to get through whatever it is you're facing right now. So really take that in and receive whatever that message is. It is a time where we do have to cultivate faith in the unknown and embrace the mystery of this period that we are entering that is going to hold so much accelerating changes. And so Saturn does have a very intensified presence due to stationing. And that does mean we might have to face a sense of limits or constraints or gravity or pressure, or have some sort of fears come up. But again, keep in mind there are other ways that Saturn can be helpful, especially in terms of deep contemplation and patiently considering what kind of foundation that you can be laying right now. Because again, we have this powerful air element coming in with Uranus and Gemini and Pluto and Aquarius. Really pay attention to your thoughts and focus your thoughts in on what you do want to create and what kind of solutions you can find. The other thing about this full moon, though, is that Saturn and Neptune are not the only planets taking on an intensified presence due to stationing. Jupiter in Cancer is also taking on an intensified presence because Jupiter will become visible as a morning star, reaching its heliacal rising a few days after the full moon in Capricorn. The exact date of when Jupiter will be heliacally rising in your location could vary from place to place based upon numerous factors, but Jupiter will be reaching the border of being 15 degrees away from the sun on July 14th. And I know from using some astronomy software that in my location where I live, Jupiter actually will be heliacally rising and visible for the first time on July 14th. But all of us in this idealized way, because Jupiter is getting beyond this 15-degree zone of a planet being under the beams of the sun on July 14th, we can consider that within a week of this full moon, within in fact 4 days, Jupiter will be heliacally rising, which means the form and presence of Zeus or whatever other deity that you may associate with the planet Jupiter is coming alive all around us in the world. There will be all sorts of Jupiterian messages coming in, and that can sometimes correlate with hope and opportunities. Experience gratitude for what you can be enjoying and thankful for in your life, and visionary ideas coming in relating to whatever calling and purpose is coming alive for you. This is a big deal because Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, but we haven't been able to fully enjoy and benefit from the full presence of an exalted Jupiter so far because Jupiter has been invisible this whole time. Jupiter entered its phase of invisibility in the beginning of June, around June 3rd. And then on June 24th, right around that new moon in Cancer, we experienced the reanimation, the rebirth, and the regeneration of Jupiter. But it's taken this entire waxing, opening half of this lunar cycle for Jupiter to finally become visible in the days following the full moon. And that means both Jupiter in Cancer as well as Saturn and Neptune in Aries have this intensified presence. And that's really fascinating because at the recent Cancer solstice, we had that Jupiter in Cancer square coming in with Saturn and Neptune. And this is a big key aspect that's all about the great collective and personal changes and growth that we are experiencing, that's also full of great tension and disruption and challenge and adversity at the same time. And so this full moon is marking an intensification of both of them. And it also marks a period where now Saturn and Neptune will be moving backwards, retrograde, and Jupiter will be moving forward. And so now that Saturn and Neptune have stationed retrograde and they're going to be moving backwards through the zodiac, and Jupiter in Cancer is now visible and will be moving forward in the zodiac, Jupiter in Cancer will be doubly blessed because not only will this exalted Jupiter now be visible, this will be an exalted Jupiter in Cancer that is now starting to get a little bit of separation and increasing space away from that tension being brought by Saturn and Neptune. Now, whatever lessons came up for you with that tension between Saturn and Neptune with Jupiter, this was probably important information for you to take in about how you needed to change your life and make adjustments and modifications in one way or another. So that's all going to still be important information to keep in mind. But now that Jupiter is visible and getting some space away from Saturn and Neptune, Jupiter will be in position to be more effective and more helpful with bringing in some productive developments and growth related to whatever vision of change and new development and new creative directions you've been nourishing and cultivating and nurturing in recent times. And so now I'm going to go through all 12 horoscopes and give a delineation for each sign in the zodiac related to this entrance of Uranus into Gemini, as well as this full moon in Capricorn. You might want to focus in especially here on your rising sign, but it will also be especially relevant for your sun sign as well as your moon sign. Capricorn. Capricorn, I'm starting with you because this full moon is all about you. It's in your sign. And so there's something fundamental and radical just about who you are, your life, how you're showing up in the world, how you're being seen, that is being illuminated. And it's a very powerful full moon because at the same time the full moon is in your sign, Jupiter is in Cancer in the opposite sign in your seventh house of relationship with Jupiter in Cancer becoming visible. And so there's something really important going on right now with you and your relational dynamics and relational patterns being illuminated, and you getting deep understanding for what it is that you need and what it is that you want in your life. And this might also have to do with things going on in your relationships. There probably will be some positive changes coming there with Jupiter now becoming visible in your seventh house. But even more importantly, Saturn and Neptune have stationed in your fourth house. And so this is activating three of the major angles in your chart. And Saturn and Neptune are stationing down in the bottom of your chart in this place of home and family, as well as the deep subterranean, unconscious, and inner life. And so feelings of, where are you at home? Where is your home? What's going to make you feel more at home? Laying foundations of greater security and stability and making changes in your life to build that solid foundation upon which to build your life. It's just such an important thing with Capricorn and your ability to make long-term plans and develop things and grow things. And so you want to be rooted and building upon a solid foundation. So it's going to be a really important reality check in terms of those foundations. And this is also very much part of this new excitement of Uranus changing signs. Now, Uranus has come into your sixth house. At the same time, it is now forming a flowing trine with Pluto in Aquarius in your second house. Obviously, this could have a lot to do with finances, with livelihood, what you're doing for work. But I think on a deeper level, there's something transformational here about how Saturn and Neptune are also focusing in on those foundational aspects of your life and really looking at how are you resourcing yourself and taking care of yourself. What are these deep values that you have to cultivate, and how does it come into concerns around money, finances, possessions, the second house, and types of topics such as resources? There's something with Pluto there that is transformational, that's going to be possible to change some of these dynamics. And Uranus in Gemini is going to want to be liberating you out of places where there's been greater toil and feeling like things are too much of a grind. Now, one thing with Uranus coming into your sixth house, you do need to make sure you're staying on top of health. It could be a concern in terms of anxieties and nerves. You want to make sure you're doing things to calm yourself and really find ways to kind of ground. But I think there's something really powerful here with Uranus coming into your sixth house to really innovate and liberate yourself out of the places where you felt like you've been in servitude to one thing or another that just isn't really what you want to have going on fully in your life. And so there's really something coming in with this full moon that's all about really radically changing and transforming your life, but it's really down in the bottom inner life, like foundational aspects of your life. There's something about that though with Capricorn. You are a sign that's very attuned to this. And so you should be able to take this information in with whatever it is and get a plan set in place to make these productive changes and get yourself onto a better track. There's something about this entrance of Uranus into Gemini that's probably going to feel like a big wake up call for you in this way. And so I hope you get some very illuminating revelations with this full moon in Capricorn. Aquarius. This full moon in Capricorn is in your 12th house. And at the same time, you are experiencing the creative renewal and invention and excitement and stimulation of Uranus having just entered Gemini, which is your 5th house. So you have some sort of creative wake up call coming in here, something being illuminated for you and sparked about what is going to be more of a passion project or what's going to be something to devote yourself to with your creativity that can more fully bring you alive. There's already something that's been going on with Pluto in Aquarius in your rising sign that's already had something coming up about how you want to become more empowered or transform yourself in some way, really claim more of your power and personal power and creativity. And so Uranus now is really going to spark that. And so it could be a time of great creative experimentation. You might find yourself wanting to try some different new approaches to different creative projects in your life. Now, at the same time, this full moon in Capricorn is really hitting you on this more interior place. The full moon is in your 12th house. And so this might be illuminating some deep, unconscious, subconscious parts of your life. And with Saturn stationing in your 3rd house and Neptune having also stationed there in your 3rd house, there might be something about needing to look at some of the inner belief systems that have been operating for you that are part of whatever recent patterns, trials, as well as successes that you've been experiencing. Because Uranus coming into your 5th house can be such a wake up call, and you might want to be really called to this new creative direction. You might be getting aware of any kind of thoughts of self limitation or any kind of fears you might have that could be getting in the way of that. So, if that is coming up, just try to work through that and really find your way into embracing the creative renewal and invention that could come in with this. Because Saturn and Neptune are stationing in your 3rd house, there might be something helpful about writing or journaling or just getting out in your community, talking to people about exchanging ideas, interacting with people, kind of giving you more a sense of what is that's going on. But this is a really exciting time for you, especially with that Pluto in your 1st house, trine Uranus in your 5th house. There's probably going to be some really exciting new creative directions for you to pursue. And so I hope this full moon really illuminates and at least one really exciting idea that you can start devoting yourself to and further developing. Pisces, this Capricorn full moon is in your 11th house of aspirations and ambitions and hopes and that path of calling that you most want to pursue, with Jupiter in Cancer becoming visible in your 5th house of creativity and romance and passion. And so there's something very illuminating here coming in that has a lot to do about this higher purpose and calling that you want to pursue with your work. But interestingly, at the same time that's going on, Uranus has just left Taurus, your 3rd house, and entered Gemini, your 4th house. And so there's something being activated about this inner life, or perhaps it's something about your home and a feeling of wanting to even move somewhere else. Pisces, definitely you might be one of the signs that suddenly finds yourself uplifting yourself and uprooting yourself from some place you've lived for a long time and suddenly going off in a very different direction with where you've been living. But it also just might be something really profound about your inner life that's going on and that's being awakened. And this could have a lot to do with even a sense of spiritual liberation, with Pluto having already been in Aquarius in your 12th house. And there's something about this deep dreaming of inner beliefs behind the scenes of your visions that's already being transformed. And now Uranus is really waking up this inner life and this unconscious realm. Now, at the same time, Saturn and Neptune are stationing in your second house. And so there could be some sort of adversity or constraint, limitation, or just something confusing going on about your finances right now, or livelihood, or some way that finances and money issues are coming in related to whatever this deeper dream is that you want to pursue. And so there might be some sort of wake up call coming in here and some kind of need to formulate a plan here. That's already probably been going on for you a little bit as you've been adjusting to Saturn and Neptune being in Aries instead of being in Pisces, your own sign, like they've been for a bit. But this is going to be more of a wake up call. But because this full moon is up in that 11th house, because Jupiter is becoming visible right now in your 5th house, there probably are some very creative solutions that are opening up for you. And really pay attention to that inner life, into your inner thoughts, and try to liberate those thoughts and have those thoughts focus in on what it is you do want to create and magnetize and attract into your life, instead of focusing in on the negative or whatever kind of concerns are coming up with Saturn and Neptune. That doesn't mean don't take those concerns seriously. There probably is something you got to get more grounded about and face about reality, but try to use that liberating potential of Uranus combined with this full moon in your 11th house to reach out for that more inspirational idea or solution that can get you through whatever sorts of challenges you might be facing at this time. And so I hope the full moon in Capricorn will illuminate something very powerful for you about your vocational calling and the dreams you really are developing that you want to pursue in this next period of time. Aries, the Capricorn full moon is in your 10th house of career and vocation and actions in the world, with Jupiter in Cancer becoming visible in your 4th house of home and family and that inner life. And so there's something profound being illuminated here about your direction in the world and who you are, because Saturn and Neptune are also stationing in your sign, in your 1st house. This is all going to be about asking, who are you? What do you want to do? What do you want to focus on? And there's something being liberated and activated in a very powerful mental way with your mind and your communication and what you might want to share and develop in your community, or even perhaps through social media or the internet or some other technological vehicle, because of Uranus now being in Gemini in your 3rd house. You've had this long transit of Uranus going across Taurus, which has maybe brought some volatility and ups and downs related to finances and livelihood. Now Uranus is coming into the 3rd house of speech and communication, local environment, daily life and errands and rituals and so forth. And something is being awakened there and liberated there. And that Uranus in Gemini is forming a flowing trine to Pluto and Aquarius in your 11th house, which is also really showing some new sense of deeper empowerment related to community and your aspirations. And so there's something very powerful here about who you are and your purpose in the world that's being illuminated in a very, very profound way. And so if there is some despair or confusion going on relating to the Saturn Neptune combination stationing in your first house. That could be the case because Saturn, Neptune stationing in your first house is a lot to deal with. But look into what are these new signs of life and change and this higher calling that's coming into your awareness, and see how you can shift and make adjustments and plans to focus more fully on that and commit to bringing that about. And so I hope there's something really illuminating about your purpose in the world and who you are and who you are becoming that you receive at this full moon. Taurus. This full moon in Capricorn is in your ninth house, with Jupiter in Cancer becoming visible in your third house along with the sun. And Uranus and Gemini has now entered your second house. So, Taurus, I'm very curious about how you are feeling now that you don't have Uranus in your sign. You're not really a sign that people associate with Uranus because you can be a very revolutionary, rebellious, inventive sign. But Taurus likes to take things a little bit more slow, be steady, reliable, consistent, hold things together. In the past 8 years, Uranus has just brought in a lot of radical change for you. And so now all of a sudden, Uranus is no longer in your sign, and there's something new to be adjusting to. There might be something now coming up with this full moon in Capricorn, illuminating the ninth house, as well as Saturn and Neptune stationing in your 12th house, which is really asking you questions about what do you believe and where do you need to put your faith? What do you have faith in? You've gone through this great period of radical change in these past 8 years. And now Uranus and Gemini has moved into your second house. Now, Uranus in the second house is also going to be a little challenging for you in terms of that financial area of your life, maybe getting a little bit more volatile and having some more ups and downs come in there. But it also means there could be some innovations brought into that financial realm and some new exciting pathways opening up for you to earn money through and become part of your livelihood, especially because of Pluto being up there in Aquarius in your midheaven in your 10th house. Pluto's been working on you already for a bit now, really wanting to transform your purpose in the world and your calling and find that greater empowerment. And so that can hopefully help you find this way into this more innovative way to earn money that's going to feel like a more authentic calling that you're pursuing. Now, at the same time, with Saturn Neptune stationing in your 12th, it might be necessary for you to pull back away, do a little bit of a withdrawal, and really check in with yourself, do some inner searching as part of this. But there could be some very big mental ideas and visionary ideas coming in with that full moon in your ninth house that get illuminated for you, especially by removing yourself from busyness so you can really focus in on that inner life. You know, it's in your ninth house. Maybe there's even some kind of exciting travel plan or new course of study or just some really exciting ideas that come in that can be part of this new creative calling and vocational development that you can start working on in this next period of time as we enter this new era. And so I hope the full moon brings you some really exciting ideas in that way to cultivate. Gemini, the full moon in Capricorn is in your eighth house, with Jupiter in Cancer becoming visible in your second house along with the sun. But the big headline story, of course, is that Uranus has entered Gemini and has entered your sign. So no matter how you're feeling about things right now, whether you feel like things are just going really well for you and you're really inspired by what's happening in the Saturn and Neptune way, that maybe Saturn and Neptune in your 11th house have already been manifesting some dreams, feeling like they're coming true, or you're really feeling like you're really on the correct path. Or perhaps you're feeling more despair. Maybe it feels more like this dream or this exciting direction you are going to pursue is just getting wrecked in some way or feeling like things just aren't working out the way you had hoped they would with Saturn and Neptune, because they can also be a downer and make us feel despair about a dream not coming true. It can really be going one way or another in pretty extreme ways. But no matter what the situation is for you, Uranus coming into your sign is a wake up call. So if things aren't going as well as you would like, there's probably going to be some ingenious, inventive, innovative solutions coming in. And this could be a big wake up call about a new direction to pursue or a more effective, innovative way to address whatever has been going on. And if you are somebody that's already feeling like everything's just going really well and you have all this momentum building, Uranus coming into your sign could be an even bigger jolt or wave of momentum, of even greater change and innovation coming through for you. Or you might get the surprising news flash that maybe even though things are going really well, there's a new direction you want to go that you weren't expecting. It's really hard to know with Uranus coming into your sign, except to know that this is a massive wake up call for you. So take note of how you are right now. You might want to do some journaling, look at yourself in the mirror, do whatever you can to get a sense of where you are right now. Because when you look back on how you are right now, even a few months from now, it's going to look really different. And it's going to look radically different years from now as you adjust to this presence of Uranus being in your sign. This can be a very exciting time for you. And so I hope you can just take that in. The combination of Uranus being in Gemini, Pluto being in Aquarius in your ninth house, and Saturn and Neptune in your 11th. Even like I said, if Saturn and Neptune have been a bit of a downer in some ways, and it feels like things aren't quite working out the way you want in the best way so far, these are really positive houses in general for getting yourself on track with this higher calling and passionate purpose and creative sense of destiny. You're one of the signs that have them in, you have this configuration in a really nice combination of houses for pursuing a more exciting creative direction. Now, all of that at the same time, this full moon in Capricorn is not in a very comfortable sign unless you're somebody that just loves being in that deep psyche and realm of death and transformation that we can associate with the eighth house. And so, especially if in some ways a Saturn Neptune stationing has felt difficult for you in that way I was describing about things not working out, the full moon coming into your eighth could really up the ante of despair potentially. So be kind to yourself. And if there are things that haven't been working out so well, use this as a way to make the adjustments that are needed. In Demetra George's book on the houses, her Ancient Astrology Volume 2, she talked about how Persephone is a fitting goddess for the eighth house in the way that it can lead to this exploration of the deep psyche and the unconscious in ways that bring up some deep, dark material, but ultimately help us transform and liberate ourselves and experience transformation and regeneration. And so, whatever the full moon is illuminating right now for you in those ways, that's going to be important information. And it could be part of this big transformational process of incredible change you're going to go through with Uranus now being in Gemini. It's also going to put a lot of focus in on your partner, shared resources, shared collaborations. If you're in some kind of job involving managing other people's money or any kind of shared resource situation, that's going to be very much illuminated. But because at the same time, Jupiter is now finally becoming visible in your second house, there should be some innovative ways coming in, new opportunities coming in for you to earn money and hopefully come into a better financial situation. And that will hopefully combine with ways of how to figure out how to do that in more sustainable, productive, consistent ways of growth coming in with your livelihood that are also lined up with this exciting new creative direction that can be coming in with Uranus now in your sign. And so go easy on yourself with this full moon in the eighth house in terms of not going too hard on yourself, but take in the information that you do receive in ways to help you transform, help you face the reality of what you're facing right now. Because Gemini, you are somebody that is full of innovative, inventive ideas right now to be cultivating and developing. And I'm really excited to see what you end up doing in these years ahead. And I hope you get some very exciting ideas illuminated for you with this full moon. Cancer. This full moon in Capricorn is in your seventh house, with Jupiter in Cancer becoming visible in your sign, in your first house, along with the sun, and Saturn and Neptune stationing in your 10th house. Now, there's also the big headline grabbing news of Uranus no longer being in Taurus in your 11th house and entering your 12th house. And that definitely is something that's really important to look at considering all of this. But there's something really powerful about this full moon, about Jupiter becoming visible, and about Saturn and Neptune stationing, because these are all in angular houses for you. And something very revelatory and illuminating is going to be coming through for you right here about whatever vocational path you've been on, about whatever relational dynamics you've been in with other people, about whatever new sense of growth and purpose and vocational calling is coming into your life with this presence of Jupiter in Cancer now becoming intensified at the Heliacal rising of Jupiter in the week after this full moon. However, of course, a big story is Uranus now being in Gemini, being in your 12th house. So you've had this period of Uranus and Taurus in your 11th house these past 8 years. That's such an amazing, exciting transit to have in your 11th house for community building, for really pursuing the authentic aspiration and ambition and dream that you most want to cultivate. And so you've already probably been on that path, and some really important developments having already happened for you in that direction. And now Uranus is coming into your 12th in Gemini. This can be another period of change coming relating to what all of this is, especially with these angular houses being activated, but it's going to be in more of a liminal way. Sometimes a big 12th house activation too, since it's a cadent house, it could go with going on foreign travel or a pilgrimage somewhere, or perhaps pulling away, withdrawing from the busyness at times to really go into some sort of deep contemplative place where you can receive these Uranian ideas. But one thing I've seen with Uranus transits through the 12th, even though it's a cadent house, we don't really think about it being a super visible house, it can be a really profound wake up call of really redreaming your life from this place of the inner psyche. And what's interesting to me about that is that Pluto is also in Aquarius in your 8th house, doing something really transformational with that inner life. And so there's something really important about this deeper layer of the inner life and the unconscious being awakened, being liberated, being transformed, while at the same time, you have a lot of external busyness going on with the full moon coming into the 1st and 7th, Jupiter in the 1st, Saturn and Neptune stationing in the 10th. So you might need to make some space and time to get away from all this busyness when you can, to really go into that inner life and exploration to see what's emerging there. Because this presence of Uranus and Uranus and Gemini in your 12th and Pluto and Aquarius in your 8th, they are feeding into this greater change and maturation and development that you're going to be experiencing in this 10th house of career relating to the Saturn-Neptune combination. And since everything in the world is going to be changing in such dramatic ways, you will be as well. And there's going to be something maybe particularly interesting, again, about that Pluto-Uranus operating more on this inner psyche, inner life way that then feeds into this greater external change going on for you. So whatever the case is with what you are experiencing, I hope this full moon brings in some helpful illumination for you. Leo, this full moon in Capricorn is in your sixth house, with Jupiter in Cancer becoming visible in your 12th house, along with the sun. But of course, the big headline story is Uranus entering Gemini and your 11th house. The transit of Uranus across your 11th house is a very exciting one, a very innovative one, because this is a place of aspiration, ambition, higher calling, greater community. Uranus here is going to be a big wake up call of more focusing in on what is that true purpose, that authentic calling that you have in the world. And not only connecting to that, but connecting in with alliances and friends and friendships and collaborations and greater community that are also aligned with this purpose. And since you're a Leo, this also very well could have to do with you taking leadership in this way and you helping to cultivate community spaces or take a stand, take leadership in certain causes that are important to you. Pluto is in Aquarius in your seventh house. And so there are some really deep relational patterns coming in that will continue to be developing for you. There could be plutonic types of people coming into your life, but in a way that Uranus is now in your 11th house and Pluto is in the seventh house of relationships. There's something about this relational aspect and connecting in with people that are really aligned with your values, your purpose, your sense of empowerment that are coming in. Now, the full moon is in your sixth house with Jupiter becoming visible in your 12th. And so this is a cadent place. And there might be here some things about health concerns, mental health being illuminated, ways to really focus in on daily routines and things that can help you calm your nerves, calm anxieties, get into a better mental space. That could be some of the things being illuminated here. And with Saturn and Neptune stationing in your ninth place, there is something also really important here about your beliefs and what you believe in, and figuring out what you really want to devote yourself to in that way, what's going to be the most important to you in that way of belief and philosophical frameworks of things, so that all of these things start combining together with the community you're in, the relationships you're in, what you're cultivating with your leadership skills. And the full moon also in this way in the sixth house might be bringing in some revelations and illuminations about ways that you felt like you've been in servitude to other things or in service of something that you don't really fully believe in anymore. And so there might be something very liberating about that that gets really amplified with that additional component of Uranus now being in your 11th house. And so whatever the case is, I hope you get some very positive, inspiring revelations with this full moon. Virgo, the full moon in Capricorn is now in your fifth house, with Jupiter in Cancer becoming visible in your 11th house along with the sun, and Uranus now in Gemini in your 10th house. This entrance of Uranus into Gemini, into your 10th house, is a massive wake up call about your direction and your calling in the world. You are going to feel illuminated with this full moon about whatever is the authentic path and calling that's going to most make you feel alive and passionate and in service to some type of purpose or calling that's truly important to you, that's truly aligned with your values and purpose. Uranus going across your 10th house might bring in some volatility and some change in the years ahead, but right now it's probably more about feeling the excitement of a new path or direction to pursue. Now, at the same time that Uranus in Gemini in the 10th is making a trine to Pluto in Aquarius in your 6th, with Saturn and Neptune stationing in the 8th. And so while on one hand, there might be something really passionate or creative illuminated with this full moon in Capricorn, there's also going to be this deeper layer of the psyche and this deeper unconscious material being activated with Saturn and Neptune stationing there in the eighth house, as well as issues related to shared resources with partners or collaborations with other people, give and take and exchanges with other people that are also really going to be illuminated and some extra weight felt there. But in the same way that they're in the eighth stationing and Pluto's already been working things for you in that sixth house area, there's probably already been something about your beliefs and your path that has already been worked on. It's already in a process of change and regeneration. And now that Uranus is coming into your 10th, it's going to probably feel like a big catalyzing spark of, these kind of breakthrough ideas and revelations, like an idea that changes everything for you and really puts you on a more exciting path. And so I hope you receive some sort of very inspiring revelation with this full moon. Libra, the full moon in Capricorn is in your fourth house, with Jupiter and Cancer becoming visible in your 10th house, and Uranus now in Gemini in your ninth house. This entrance of Uranus into your ninth and getting out of your eighth house is probably going to feel very exciting for you. It's certainly an incredibly mentally stimulating transit to experience Uranus moving across your ninth house. It might be bringing up ideas of travel, new courses of study to pursue, or just really exciting ideas, a lot of exciting mental activity. You're a very intelligent, very intellectual sign. And so there's something very exciting here that's getting activated with Uranus and Gemini. And it's now forming this flowing trine with Pluto and Aquarius in your fifth house. Pluto's already been working on transforming this area of creativity and pleasure and passion. And so Uranus now coming into the ninth, I think it's just going to really catalyze some really interesting ideas. Now, at the same time, Saturn and Neptune are stationing in your seventh. And so there is something really important about relationships also being activated here. There might be some tests related to relationships, some issues coming in here related to relationships, big relationship patterns being exposed. Ultimately, Libra, you are a sign that is often stereotypically talked about being overly focused on relations and relationships. And what is true is Libra has an incredible aptitude for relational dynamics, so much so that you can at times get too much caught up in the relational dynamics going on with other people. And so there is something about the Saturn Neptune stationing there that is going to be about ultimately clarifying things for yourself and setting up the boundaries that you need in relationships and making sure that you are focusing in on the path and work and purpose that you truly want to be pursuing. With Jupiter now becoming visible in your 10th house, there is some important calling coming in here, some greater purpose opening up here with your work and your career. That might not be totally happening right now, but you're at least getting the vision of where you want to go and where you want to develop things. The full moon, though, is illuminating your fourth house. And so this might be a great lunation actually just to make some time at home, take it easy, get a break, do something relaxing, and just let yourself take in the illumination and feed yourself from this inner source of pleasure and passion and creativity, because something is opening up for you that's going to be a great inspirational change. And so I hope you receive some very inspiring revelations in that way for you with this full moon in Capricorn. Scorpio, the full moon in Capricorn is in your third house, with Jupiter and Cancer becoming visible in your ninth house. And Uranus has now entered your eighth house of Gemini. So Uranus leaving your seventh and coming into your eighth is bringing a big wake up call, especially if you're in relationships or you have a very primary romantic or personal relationship of shared resources, or maybe you just have shared resources through different relationships, different collaborations, or you're working on managing resources through work with other people, whatever the case might be, there's been something relational being really liberated, being activated, big changes happening these past 8 years with Uranus and Taurus. And now it's come into the eighth, and something about these shared resources with others, give and take with others, is being really illuminated. And there might be something here that needs to be really liberated. With Saturn and Neptune stationing in your sixth, you might become really aware of where you feel like you have been in servitude to something or giving your power away in some way, and getting a sense now of what needs to change, what needs to be rebalanced, some sort of wake up call coming in here with Pluto down there in your fourth, forming that trine to Uranus in your eighth. There's going to be something really rich and deep about your inner life to explore. You are a sign that can explore that inner life and that inner transformation. So there's going to be something deeply transforming from within. And then Saturn and Neptune can hopefully help you embrace the way to change things and get yourself out of whatever type of, if you've been in a type of kind of daily grind, working something that's not really what you want to be working fully, or doing things in one way or another in that way just to have to make the money you need to make, and it's not really fully what you want to be doing. There's some new dream they're opening up now. Because Saturn and Neptune are also in your sixth, make sure you are taking care of your health and getting the rest you need and doing what you can to calm your nerves and so forth. Now, at the same time, this full moon in Capricorn is in a very intellectually, mentally active area of your chart, with Jupiter becoming visible in your ninth house. And so this can be a time of great illumination, big ideas coming in, perhaps even travel plans, new ideas to develop. So you might want to make some time to journal or just brainstorm ideas that are really coming up for you at this full moon, because again, there's something really deep within that's transforming. And then this is going to show up then maybe through big revelatory ideas that come in with this full moon. That could be something really exciting for you to start developing over this next period of time. So whatever the case might be for you, I hope you did get one of those really inspiring revelations that you can take in and get some new creative ideas to develop with this full moon in Capricorn. Sagittarius. This full moon in Capricorn is in your second house, with Jupiter in Cancer becoming visible in your eighth house. And the big headline story, of course, is Uranus now having entered Gemini and your seventh house. Uranus coming into your seventh house is waking up relationships, waking up the relationship patterns that you've been embedded in, maybe new exciting relationships coming into your life, just a lot of change happening, a lot of more mental stimulation, mental exchanges with other people. At the same time that Uranus and Gemini in your seventh is forming a trine now with Pluto and Aquarius in your third. You've already been adjusting to Pluto and Aquarius in your third. It's been already transforming and bringing in new ideas relating to communication, perhaps writing, speech, something mental that you're working on. Perhaps it's something to do with social media, using the internet in some way, with technology and the way you communicate your ideas, with whatever you do for work or just your creative process. But now Uranus is going to really be sparking something and catalyzing something more creative. And at the same time, you have Saturn and Neptune stationing in your fifth house of creativity. There's something really potentially powerful coming through here. Now, similar to what I said for Gemini in an earlier one, there is the other side of Saturn and Neptune, where sometimes there has been some dream related to the fifth house that just hasn't worked out in one way or another, or you're facing constraints, you're facing some despair or darkness about this creative direction or whatever other fifth house type of topic is happening for you. Keep in mind, though, that even if that is the case, Uranus coming into Gemini in an angular house, forming that trine to Pluto in the third house. There are creative, inventive solutions at hand and available, and something might really come in like a lightning strike that gives you this really ingenious solution to whatever that difficulty has been. So pay attention to that, be open to receiving that. At the same time, the full moon is illuminating the second house. So there could be something here about finances and some changes going on there, especially then how it's relating to shared resources with others, and that area of shared resources with others, whether that's through a primary partnership or different relational dynamics you have with people where you collaborate or have resources in one way or another. There's some type of new growth and development there to be cultivating. And then that's now being feeding into something related to your own personal finances and livelihood in the second house with this full moon that's there for you to pay attention to. Whatever the case might be, Sagittarius, I hope you get some really exciting ideas to develop with this full moon in Capricorn. If you'd like to talk about all of this change that's in the air and all of these great astrological cycles coming into effect right now and how it affects your life and your natal chart, I would love to work with you in an astrological consultation. My books are open right now, and so I will put a link below to my scheduler so you can book a consultation with me. I am running a 20% off discount coupon right now using my scheduler. And so if you go to my scheduler and book a consultation with me before July 24th, use the coupon code Jupiter to get 20% off the consultation. You just need to use this coupon code before July 24th because it will expire before that time. You don't need to have the consultation with me before July 24th. You just need to book it before then. I have not offered a discount coupon like this to the general public in many, many years. It's something that I sometimes do periodically on my Patreon to Patreon supporters. So please take advantage of this. I'd love to talk to you about all this wild astrology that we're experiencing. I also have an exciting course beginning soon on July 19th, all about the timing technique, secondary progressions. This is going to be a really exciting course. This will be the fourth time that I've taught this course. Secondary progressions are a very powerful timing technique that really puts you in touch with the way your chart is evolving and changing over time, and it creates these different chapters of your life story. It's really, to me, of all the techniques out there with timing, the technique that is always the most accurate and practical and powerful in terms of really connecting you in with a felt sense of where you are with your life story and the changes that you are experiencing. I will have a link below in the description so you can read more about this. In case you need to have a payment plan set up for this, I can set that up for you. So just reach out to me if that's the case and something that you need. I also have a webinar coming up this weekend on July 12th. It is going to be about fixed stars. And we are going to focus in on this one on stars that are said to have the nature of Venus and Mercury. That is going to be Vega in the Lyre, and Fomalhaut in the Southern Fish, and Denabadigi, the tail of the swan, Cygnus. We're going to talk about what it means to have a planet or angle or something else in your chart close to the same degree as one of these stars. And we're also going to talk about the concept of star parans, which means on the day you're born, you have one of these stars on an angle at the same time that a planet is at another angle. So for example, you might have when the day you were born, when Venus was rising that day, Vega was culminating at the midheaven. And so now Vega is coming through and expressing the meaning of Vega through your Venus, even though your Venus is not at the degree of Vega, which is about 15 Capricorn. We're also going to talk about the mythology associated with these stars and the way they show up in the astrological magic tradition. This is going to be a really exciting webinar. And so it's happening this Saturday, July 12th. If you watch this before then, you still have time to sign up. And I hope to see you there. I also have a Patreon community that you can read more about and join to support my work, get extra discounts of working with me, as well as extra material and videos that I share on my Patreon that I don't share elsewhere. I will also put a link below to that. Otherwise, if you could please like and subscribe to my channel if you have not done so already, it's really helpful for me and my channel. Thank you so much for listening and being present at this incredibly powerful time of Uranus entering Gemini and all of the incredible change that we're all going to be experiencing in the years ahead.